The Bible claims Jesus lived. However, just between you and me, it's a bit biased. If you take the Bible out of the equation, does this claim still hold up, that Jesus actually lived from outside the Bible? Let's get into it. If you're interested in unmasking biblical myths, then hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Now, looking at the evidence outside the Bible, there are a couple of people that have written about Jesus. One of these is Tacitus, or Latin for tactical. He was a very highly regarded Roman historian. As a Roman, like others of his time, he didn't like Christians. One of those historical documents was written around the early part of the 2nd century and was writing about Nero, the Roman emperor, 50 years earlier. Now, Nero also didn't like Christians very much, although he did seem to like dipping them into oil, sticking them on stakes and setting them on fire for his garden parties. Now, Tacitus stated that Nero wanted to create a building project, but there were houses in the way. So what any emperor would do, he had the building secretly burnt and shifted the blame on the Christians. Tacitus wrote, "Therefore, to put down the rumour, Nero substituted as culprits and punished in the most unusual ways those hated for their shameful acts, whom the crowd called Christians." The founder of this name, Christus in Latin, had been executed in the reign of Tiberius by the procurator Pontius Pilate. Tacitus had at his disposal information, most likely the Actus Senatus, which was the Roman Senate's documents of their activities. Unfortunately, they don't exist now, but Tacitus was a historian and would not have written anything that was a myth or that didn't happen. Also, this text shows that not only did Nero do terrible things to people called Christians, but there was a person called Christ that was crucified by Pontius Pilate, and Tacitus even went as far to make sure that we knew it wasn't just anyone, but Christ, the founder of the Christian movement. Now, another historian is Flavius Josephus. He was a historian a bit before Tacitus at the end of the 1st century. Josephus, a Jew, originally led an army against Rome, lost, became a slave, and finally became a historian for Rome. Okay, I've missed out a little bit, but you get the point. Of course, having Jewish and Roman influences, he hated Christians. He wrote twice about Jesus. The first one is considered very accurate, and no one doubts that it is written by Josephus himself. Being therefore this kind of person, a heartless Sadducee, Ananias, thinking that he had a favourable opportunity because Festus had died and Albinus was still on his way, called a meeting of judges and brought into it the brother of Jesus, who is called Messiah, James by name, and some others. He made the accusation that they had transgressed the law, and he handed them over to be stoned. Now, there's a whole lot of backstory that I'm not even going to go into. Sounds like the Romans just like blaming Christians at the time. Even though writing about James, brother of Jesus, it is still making the statement that there was an actual person named James that was the brother of Jesus, who is called Messiah. We are left with no doubt who he's talking about. The second, there is some suspicion that someone has added some details. Interesting thing is that it can be either of three things. Either Josephus wrote it all, he wrote none of it, or he wrote some of it and someone added some floral arrangement and made it sound a little too Christian. Josephus was not. Modern historians pretty much agree that he would have written some of it and someone had added their own bits. It is still saying that Jesus existed. Let me read this to you. I'll emphasize the part that the historians believe have been added. Around this time there lived Jesus, a wise man, if indeed one ought to call him a man. For he was one who did surprising deeds, and a teacher of such people as accept the truth gladly. He won over many Jews and many of the Greeks. He was the Messiah. When Pilate, upon hearing him accused by men of the highest standing among us, had condemned him to be crucified, those who in the first place came to love him did not give up their affection for him. For on the third day he appeared to them restored to life. The prophets of God had prophesied this and countless other marvelous things about him. And the tribe of the Christians, so called after him, have still to this day not died out. Like I said, historians agree that Josephus did write this originally. However, they also agree that he didn't write all of it. It is still proof of someone that named Jesus that people called a wise man that did surprising deeds, that was crucified by a person named Pilate. What does all of this prove? Well, Bart Ehrman, a New Testament scholar, wrote in his 2012 book, The Historical Argument for Jesus of Nazareth. He quoted, "The reality is that every single author who mentions Jesus, pagan, Christian, or Jewish, was fully convinced that he at least lived. Even the enemies of Jesus' movement thought so. Among their many slurs against the religion, his non-existence is never one of them. Jesus certainly existed." It does make you wonder who this actual person is. Makes you think. Catch you in the next one.